is going on, everybody? Welcome in to the North End Podcast, episode 212. My name is Zach Graham, your host here in the North End, joined, as always, by my good buddy. He's on record as my best friend. His name is Ian Michaud, and we call him
E.
E, sitting here on a Thursday, cloudy, Austin, Texas, getting ready to welcome the Portland Timbers to town. I know it has been a busy week for both of us, so gearing up here. Match day -2, right? We're finishing up kind of our wacky schedule here on a Thursday. How you feeling, my friend?
I'm excited, man. Amped up, ready for this game. I know we got a little get back for these Portland guys. Initially feeling uber confident about this matchup, having them come play us here at the Q. But after some further research, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, as we did on the last episode where we're looking at these matchups coming in here in April and everything like that. But they're going to be revamped a little bit. So I think we got to show them some respect. But I'm feeling very confident about this game. Want to take time to shout out my buddy Tom Knack. He hit me up, friend from high school back in New York. And he's like, man, I listened to that St. Louis preview and I could feel the hatred that you had for St. Louis oozing through the speakers. And I was like, oh, that's good, man. You know, any way I can spread some more hatred, I will take that opportunity every time. So I'm very excited. My younger brother's going to be at this game for the first time, his first ever professional soccer game. So he's incredibly excited about that. So we're all really amped up here and ready to roll.
Yeah, man. So I'm hitting on two of those points. First with the hatred from last week's preview episode. I don't think I mentioned this to you, but Steph Cragnola, right, of Soon Tower Soccer, did mention to me she very much enjoyed the hate that was on display in that St. Louis preview. So it was all regions of the country enjoying that hate. And then, yeah. Shout out to Deebo, man. I'm excited to indoctrinate, your bro there. And look, even more reason why the team has to pick up the 3 points here this weekend against, like you mentioned, a very different looking Portland Timbers team than the one we saw just over a month ago. We'll talk about all that. We've got some nonsense. We'll check in on the best keeper in the world, all that good stuff before we get into the rest of episode 212 here in the North. And just want to remind you all listening or watching on the YouTube channel that the best way to support the show, you can actually support us financially by downloading the audio versions of all of our episodes wherever you get your podcast. You can usually go Apple, Spotify, what have you, toggle on auto downloads. You can support the show going forward. You don't have to think about it again. You go the extra mile, rate and review the show wherever you get your podcast. And if you are watching on the YouTube channel, the best way to support the show there is by hitting that subscribe button. You can also hit the notification bell to know when a live stream pops up or a new episode goes live. And of course, here on episode 212, like the video, hit the thumbs up, help us battle the YouTube algorithm overlords, atone for your sins, wash yourselves clean in the waters of the North End. So like you mentioned, right, we take a deep breath after coming off yet another victory on Sunday and celebrating and say, oh, we're never losing again, right? And then you take a look at this Portland team, and they are certainly revamped. I guess before we get fully into the preview here, I want to shout out our buddy Lincoln Rose, right? The radio voice of Austin FC, who always comes through for us when we have just a random question that we throw out there into the ether. Lincoln usually is on top of it. So he actually did confirm that the Fox broadcast, the national broadcast last week, does rely on the Apple TV feed, and he included a clip of the replay happening during live play near the end of that St. Louis match. And it made me laugh because you can hear in the commentators' silence how much they want to just yell at somebody in the truck, like, what are we doing? Here's the short corner, played quickly. And then the replay comes, it's just silent for 3 seconds, and then the live play comes back on the screen. Oh, it's cleared out, but, oh, man. Come on, Apple. Come on.
Gotta get with it. And tell the people how to toggle Lincoln on there.
So if you are watching on the Apple TV feed, there is, I think you have to, like, click up on your remote or, tap on your screen if you're watching on your phone or your tablet. But in the settings for these live broadcasts, if you get annoyed with some of the Apple TV commentators, as we do from time to time, you don't want to hear Guilherme being called beer, right? Things of that nature. You can toggle on the Austin radio broadcast while you're watching on Apple TV. And that's something that I think you and I, right? Like, we've been aware of that. But the way this season has begun, that may become just the way we start these matches going forward, watching these road matches from home. So shout out one more time to Lincoln. It's always awesome to get those assists, right? Provide the expected assists on Lincoln Rose through the roof. All right, so let's talk about Portland here. And of course, you can read our written match preview article at thenorthendpodcast.com after this episode is posted. We always talk about the all-time record after that loss earlier this season. Austin now just 3 wins, 1 draw, and 6 losses against Portland Timbers. Of course, in that match earlier this season, I think everybody listening to this podcast would probably agree with us that there was a little bit of luck involved there for Portland, and maybe some bad luck involved for us on that free kick that ended up bouncing into the net for David DaCosta. But Portland coming to Q2 always elicits some good memories, right? Because not only our first ever home goal and home win against the Timbers back on July 1st, 2021, but 2 months later, Portland comes back, right? That was when Steve Clark was in net for them. So, we have never been able to put it on them like those 2 meetings. It was 4-1 and then 3-1 there, the first 2 meetings between these 2 teams. So, since then, just 4 points from 8 matches for Austin FC. So, the Timbers have dominated this series overall. And kind of like I said with St. Louis last week, man, it is time to turn the tide.
Yeah, absolutely. With this Portland team, we've known since our introduction here to MLS that they're a bit of a staple. They consistently have pretty solid teams. And as you see from those last couple of results here versus Austin, they've handled us pretty well. But this matchup, man, it's interesting to me. This one is really, really interesting to me. I mean, it caused us, after we dropped this game to them, I think, a month and a half ago,
it was
something.
5 weeks ago.
Something like that. We said this might be the worst start in regard to vibes that we've ever had.
Well, that was after Colorado, but it was those 2 back-to-back, right? Because it was Portland, then Colorado. And we were talking about goalless streaks and comparing it to the past, and luckily we found out that it wasn't anywhere close to a club record scoreless streak, but that's how we were feeling.
I mean, it was a really, really low point, especially with how that game ended, how they got that goal here. But it's time to, take a closer look at this Portland team because they are going to look different. I do expect them to play a little different. They got some key contributors back. So we're going to have to be on our toes here.
Yeah, so Portland currently sitting on 10 points through their first 6 matches here. So just 2 points back of Austin and sitting 6th in the Western Conference table. But these are 2 teams coming in good form because they have 7 points from their last 3 matches. And that kind of corresponds to some of these guys getting healthy and getting back into, 90 minutes fit type of form, right? And Santiago Moreno and I think Juan Mascara, probably the 2 guys that stick out the most to me. One thing before we talk more about that player personnel that will be different here, I found this shocking. 10 points through 6 matches is the second best 6-match start in Portland history. So for a team that came in 2009, and we, on the last preview 5 weeks ago, we discussed the success that this team has had, right? And this is a team that was in the MLS Cup final back in 2021. But for such a, what you and I consider maybe not a storied franchise, but it's a franchise that's been around, again, since 2009, my ass was graduating high school that year. So the fact that 10 points through 6 matches is their second highest watermark through 6, it just kind of was a little bit eye-opening. Because we've had 2 starts better than that in 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. That is kind of eye-opening. I did not anticipate that.
Yeah. So, but getting back to the player personnel here, right? Santi Moreno, I think, is without question the most important piece that this team has reintegrated into their lineup, because this is a guy who still on a U22 deal, and we can bring up the roster profile as we have been examining these throughout the early parts of the season. This is a 2-4 GAM build here for Portland. They have all 6 of those slots filled out with just over 1 million in GAM remaining as of March 3rd of this year. So you see Santi Moreno in there as one of the 4 U22 options, along with Anthony, David Ayala, and Kevin Kelsey. Santi Moreno, just for a reference point that maybe hits a little bit closer to home. He was signed by this team, I want to say 4 seasons ago. Either way, 153 appearances for Santi Moreno for the Timbers. 113 appearances for Santi and 53 goal contributions. So that reference point that I was getting to, if we just take the sum of Austin's all-time U22 initiative contributions, it's 19 contributions in 153 appearances from Rodney Redis, Musa Gite, pre-2025 Jean Kolmanich, and now Nico Dubersarski. So 53 contributions in 113 games for Moreno. Austin's club history from the U22 spots, 19 in 153. And of course, Redis and Gite are the guys that you would expect to be racking up the goal contributions. But I think it's more of an indicator of how strong Moreno is as a player, rather than just, shitting on our favorite team. But it's probably a little of both.
And the thing about him that makes him truly dangerous in my eyes is that he's not just a guy who can go out and get you some goals. He sets other players up and he makes other players better, which makes him part of this puzzle that has seen Portland have this nice little run of form here, because they're unlocking a bit other players more. You're getting guys into more comfortable positions than what we saw them in this first matchup, and particularly in a style and a formation that Neville wants to play. And Moreno is part of the guy, or one of the guys who makes that all go.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because we saw, not just in our match, but really the first 3 for Portland, as they were so shorthanded, right? The first match, they get the red card from Miller so early on. Then they're missing that laundry list of players, right? Against us, I guess just going through that list of players, Santi Moreno, Kamal Miller was out for the red card suspension. Mosquera was out with an injury. Dario Zuparic, a center back for them, was out with an injury. Miguel Araujo is still apparently waiting on his green card, which he was out of the country for the first time. So Phil Neville actually addressed that today in his media availability, saying that Araujo is still part of their team. He's still, quote, their player. But the fact that process is taking so long, right, stretching from late February to now the first week of April, that's just supremely unfortunate for both club and player. Cabecita, right, Jonathan Rodriguez, still out. Neville did say that he's expected to start training next week. So that's just another so-called bullet in the chamber here for Portland, when they are full strength. And Maxime Crepeau, right, who was their starting keeper to begin the year, he was out with an injury in that first meeting between these two. Finally back on the bench, but James Pantemis did continue to get the start last week for this Portland team, and Pantemis has been very, very solid. So to your point as well about Moreno, and it's not just the goal scoring, but the creation, shot creation, goal creating actions. He's on the ball a ton. And this team is only going to continue to get better as the chemistry between him and David DaCosta continues to form and elevate here. Moreno ranks in the 89th percentile in touches, 85th percentile in chances created over the last calendar year among attacking midfielders in the men's next 14 leagues. And in the 304 minutes he's been on the pitch for Portland this season, he ranks either first or second on the team in progressive carries, progressive passes, and progressive passes received per 90 minutes. So again, the output last year for this team was crazy. Top tier in the league, 65 goals, 1.91 goals per game. Over the last 3, very small sample size, but 5.1 XG, and they've overperformed that to the tune of 7 goals. It helps when Houston back passes directly to Anthony to add to that total, but again, the last 3 games have been fairly impressive compared to what we expected from this team through the first 3 weeks. And again, they snuck out some results in the first 3 weeks, specifically against our favorite team as well. But this is, especially on the counter on Saturday, I think this is just as dangerous of a team as we've seen at Q2 this year, right? Like the Rapids, obviously Sporting was kind of beat down, and they are as a whole. Finally, Peter Vermees got the boot here this past week, but LAFC I think is the only like more talented team across the board compared to what is coming here on Saturday with these guys healthy. And I do want to talk about Mosquera and Miller and some of these other guys.
I mean, we'll start with how grateful I am that Cabecita is not playing, because I think he takes them up to another level here. But I mean, the Moreno impact can be seen right away. Like you look at their last 4 games, he only got 45 minutes versus Nashville. They dropped that 1-2-0. And then those 3 games after that, they reel off 7 of their 9 goals on the season in those 3 contests, and he gets 2 assists. You know, Felipe Mora really struggled versus us in that first game. I thought he was really bad, but Moreno has helped him out quite a bit. You've seen an uptick in production from Mora as well as Anthony, and like they're still going to have to figure out a little bit with who's on the ball with DaCosta and Moreno, but they are definitely threatening, and they have speed as well. I think one of the faster teams with those 2 guys flanking the wings now with Anthony and Moreno out there.
Yeah, and like being able to have Anthony play in his natural winger spot rather than that right wing back, while they were kind of, that makeshift back 5 that they had going on through the first 3 weeks of the season. They're settling in kind of in all facets. And again, returning Kamal Miller, who I think you get kind of mixed reviews from people who watch Kamal over the long term, but this is a guy who, right, I guess in Austin FC lore, right, one-time expansion draft pick by Claudio Reyna and then immediately traded and then immediately be named an MLS All-Star there with CF Montreal. So, like, former All-Star. He played a lot of left back for them last year. So, like, when you look at some of his stats and you try to compare to other guys positionally, it can be a little bit tough to kind of nail down what exactly he's doing really, really well for this team. And again, I think that kind of plays into the idea of, like, folks who have been watching Kamal Miller over the last year or 2 less impressed than they were, back around that All-Star season. But just getting him back on that back line, because Yeimer Forey, I think it's Yeimer and not Jimmer, because you and I of course are gonna default to Jimmer there. Shout out to Jimmer for that.
Absolutely.
So Forey has been playing out there on the left, and then next to Miller, it seems that Finn Sermon, the Australian, the kind of another one of those young guys, right? Not Ian Smith, the super draft pick, but Sermon has won that other center back spot for now, because Zach McGraw and Dario Zuparic, 2 of the kind of mainstays on this Portland back line. Sermon has been starting over them, so I would expect a Miller-Sermon pairing here on the back line as well. But then Mosquera at right back. This is a guy who maybe the most important piece of this Portland back line when they're fully healthy. Was initially a U22 guy for them, signed in 2022, but then inked an extension in the early parts of last season, which forced them to move him off a U22 designation because he turned 2022. He turned 22. A lot of twos. He turned 22 in September of last year, so was not eligible to stay as a U22 initiative player. So still extremely young, and led this team in minutes last year. Again, a team that went to the playoffs, generated a ton of offense. Mosquera is a huge piece for them to have back on the field this Saturday as well. So again, it is a completely different team, getting a lot of their key contributors back, like not necessarily in the counting stats with a Miller or a Mosquera, but with what this team wants to do, how they want to play. And that is translated, like we mentioned, to them being able to set up tactically, formationally rather, in something that both Phil Neville and their player personnel are a little bit more comfy with.
Yeah, man, let's start with Kamal Miller. I've always been a fan. He's going to do some things that frustrate you if he's on your team, for sure. But he is a veteran and he plays hard, and I can appreciate that about him. You see Sermon there taking that job from Zuparic, which I love because I hate Zuparic for the hard fouls he put on Seba last year. Just a couple dirty ones, like, left a bad taste in my mouth. But you hit it on the head there with Mosquera, man. He is one of the pieces, one of a cog to this entire engine that Portland has that kind of unlocks a lot of different things. And to your point, really trying to hammer this home is that this is now giving them the flexibility to put guys in the correct position. So it's going to be a dangerous right side there with Mosquera and Moreno for sure.
Well, like I don't know how long we're like 20 minutes into the episode. We haven't even mentioned Diego Chara yet. Like Chara's still out there, captaining this team. So a pretty talented side here. Certainly more dangerous than the team that we already dropped 3 points to on the road earlier this season. So it's going to be a significant challenge here. I think Austin's up for it, though. Is there anything
Yeah.
else you have to add on the Portland side of things?
I thought in the first matchup, one of the players who stood out to me in an otherwise pretty ugly game for Portland was Anthony. And I believe he is the player who drew the foul that led to the DaCosta.
That was Ian Smith. But
okay,
because I remember that fucker because he flopped like a motherfucker. Like,
okay.
I don't even want to talk about that anymore.
Okay. But Anthony was dangerous that game. I'm pretty sure he drew like 8 fouls in that match. Like he drew a lot of fouls in that game. So he was setting them up. And particularly with how in the mud their offense was, he was getting them set pieces that allowed them to kind of take a breath and be like, hey, we can get a good look here. And then ultimately you get the look that is, not a good look, but happens to beat Brad and rip our hearts out. Honestly, the taste in my mouth from this game has been really, really just kind of lingering, even despite the recent form that we've had as a club, because it was just a game that I know we should have walked away with at least 1 point. You talked about the Colorado matchup earlier, outplayed in that game. I think this Portland game, we outplayed them, but you're going to have to adjust for what this team's going to do here. And I think it's going to be really, really important to hone in on our transitional defense, which I think has been very solid this season.
Yeah. It's a fucking great poll by you, dude. 9 fouls drawn by Portland in that match, 5 of them drawn by Anthony.
Okay.
Nobody else had more than one. So pretty good memory there.
Hey,
Up in the old mind fortress. Well, let's talk about everybody's favorite team here. Because of the wacky schedule, we actually already got Nico's press availability here. Brendan Heinzike was the player that was made available earlier today. The first thing I want to do is shout out Alex from We Are Austin TV, our buddies over there. Alex been doing fantastic work this season and pretty much giving us exactly what we want. A little video of Mikkel Dessler doing some individual drills here today, and then Nico continued to kind of parrot the stance that Dessler's right on track for the timeline that we set out for him, 6 to 8 weeks, with the emphasis on the 8. So like the fact that he's out here doing some of these drills, a little bit of like, it didn't look like hard cutting, kind of rounding his corners there, but like again, if he's on pace to be ready to at least come off the bench once the calendar flips to May, we'll be just fine.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And again, like with Johnny slotting in there, that has been great for us. It's been a stopgap. So I don't think we need to rush Dessler back. Let's get him back when he's ready, fully go, get him integrated and everything. We have been looking good with Johnny at that right wing back spot there, or right full back, what have you.
Some of the other interesting tidbits from today, and I think this is the one where we don't have to be concerned about it this weekend, but and it's not really a huge concern, but could be a little bit of a speed bump, and no pun intended with our secondary mascot there. But Mirtu Izuni, right? We know his wife is pregnant, right? We talked about that preseason where he's coming over here. His family is remaining in Europe. I believe they're in Spain right now, but apparently his baby is due in the next 2 weeks. And Coach Estévez said that it's, of course, Izuni's decision whether or not he wants to stay here or fly back to Europe for the birth of his child. So we may be missing Izuni for one of these matches later this month. Other than that, again, like no injuries were additional injuries were reported. We remember Coach Nico talked about Osman and how he came off as a precaution, right? Was cramping up a little bit against St. Louis. And then from BHI, some of the things that Brendan said that I thought were interesting. Overall, he said that they've actually been watching film on the way that national teams like Spain, France were 2 of the countries that he mentioned, like watching film on those teams and how they defend as a unit. And he also mentioned like one thing that they're trying to focus on now, as they've proven that they can defend in a low block, is defending with a little bit of a higher line, right? And being able to play more with the ball, because he indicated we expect to be pushing a little bit more at home, pushing forward rather. And so that does present some different challenges, especially with a team like Portland who can counter you to death. And we've
Yeah.
seen that before at Q2 from this Portland team. I mean, last year was a good example.
Yeah, I mean, this actually does give me a little pause here. I don't know if we're trying to integrate that right now for this game or whatever, but this is definitely a team that can get you out into space and create really threatening chances. So, I like we've outlined our frustrations with some of the things on the offensive side of the ball that we have been working through, but like let's be grateful and show some gratitude for the things that we know have looked really good thus far, and that has been the defensive side of the ball. So if those guys are doing those things, putting in that work, doing that film study and everything, I feel good about it. But still, just I was gonna come in here being hella disrespectful to Portland. Like I was thinking about it last night before I went to bed about how disrespectful I was going to be towards this team. But then seeing who they're getting back and everything, we're definitely scrapping that plan. So I know the guys aren't as emotional as I am. So we'll we'll feel good about this once we see what the product looks like.
Some other notes, looking through stats. Brandon Vasquez now has 3 yellow cards, so we're just getting close to the time where we're going to start watching for yellow card suspensions, and if he was going to pick up a yellow card over his next 5 matches, then he will officially be on that accumulation watch. Nobody else has more than 2. And speaking of other statistics, I did want to bring this up because I think this is one of the coolest ideas that I've seen in terms of MLS statistics and being able to visualize some of that data. So credit to Sebastian Bush, who is the individual behind the MLS Stats Blue Sky account that we pull up, right? We pull up his charts that he puts out for all these games in all of our recap episodes. This is a database titled How Your Team Scores. So it's just MLS XG data. It's very customizable with the filters that they have on here. You can cycle through. Like right now I have this filtered for all of Austin's shots in the 2025 season. You can filter by XG category, right? Poor, average, good, and great XG shots. The result of those shots, like build-up category, was it off a basic pass, a set piece? Is it individual play, right? The possession type, faster, normal, slower play, game state, right? Are you up? Are you down? What have you? So my only gripe with this so far is that it's using the XG model from American Soccer Analysis, which appears to be very different from what you and I like to use with Opta's data, which Opta is the stat provider for sites like FOTMOB, sites like FBref, right? And so the reason I noticed this is you can also toggle this to shots against. So I was trying to look at Austin's defense and like get that visualization on just how dominant they've been in terms of limiting those high quality chances. There are only 2 great chances, I believe, that were categorized here by the opponents. And both of them were just wildly different XGs from the Opta data. So that's what just like kind of set off alarm bells in my head while I was trying to like get something here. And then I saw also the great Phil West, who did help me figure out the differences here, put out a great article on Verde All Day this morning using this database and trying to draw some early season conclusions. So again, as we always do, urge all the North End listeners to go sign up at Verde All Day because Phil's stuff is fantastic. But I guess just overall, you can see here, American Soccer Analysis has Austin for 8.03 XG. Opta Analysis has us for 7.1. So in a 6-game span, it's a full goal difference in the expected goals. So again, all I want is some uniformity in my MLS stats because that's what I'm used to in the other sports that I've been more attached to in the early parts of my life here. But I did want to shout out Sebastian Bush and then by extension Phil West for the work we've seen with these tables this week, and would encourage everybody, if you're on Blue Sky, at MLS Stat is where Sebastian puts out all of his charts that we use here, and you can find this tool is pinned to his account. So I did just want to call that out because, again, despite my gripes with the differences in XG there, it's a really fucking cool idea.
That is a really, really cool tool. And
Yeah.
as people who are definitely sports data lovers that
Yeah.
we are, like, that is just fantastic. Not perfect, obviously, but very, very cool find.
Yeah, absolutely. So, another thing that's been going around, as it should, like we are big proponents of celebrating all victories and all winning streaks and records that we can set, right? And we talked about how this current 3-game winning streak for Austin FC is the first 3-game winning streak since July 2022. And for the last 2 weeks, the start in the 2025 season has been the best start in Austin FC history. So, we'll probably, if we do get a victory here, we'll probably post something about the win streak. But as long as we keep winning, everybody, it will be the best start in club history every single week. So we're just, blanket that out there.
Simple enough. Simple
Yeah,
enough. Just
exactly.
keep winning fucking games.
Keep winning. And look, this is the Mirtu Azuni method. We're here to break records, right? And
That's
all
right.
you have to do is keep winning. So
There we go.
Like you mentioned on Monday's episode, right? We're getting very close to having dangerous levels of confidence in this team. We are 17.6% of the way through the regular season schedule, and like the table is probably the best thing to point at in terms of being like it's still way too early to draw big conclusions. But again, we are inching ever closer because we are I think we're 3 points above LAFC in 8th. So like a loss or even a draw could tumble you down the table, but while it's still congested here, you'd rather be at the top of the scrum, right? Like Jon Snow at the end of Battle of the Bastards, gasping for air, like, we're up there, right? There's a big old scrum going on, but we got 12 points and we can breathe up here, baby. So, this is a big time opportunity because Vancouver is next, and Vancouver is the only team in the West that is ahead of us by just 1 point. So, like, you get a win here, and you can set up a potential first and second place matchup next week. And a win guarantees you that you have the opportunity next week to be playing for first position in the West. So again, all of that on top of the fact that your brother is coming to his first ever game here this weekend, and like I'm not stamping this with the must win, but it sure would be nice.
It sure would be nice for sure. I guess burning question here: what do you think, Ilya or Danny in this starting lineup?
I'm glad you asked because that's the next thing I wanted to discuss is like what do we see in the lineup here, and that is the probably the burning question in terms of your starting 11 is does Ilya get back in there and who is it for? I'm gonna go out and say these things again, and I was wrong about it last week saying you're not benching the captain right now. I do think Ilya gets back in there, but you also it's like. Can you bench Owen Wolf right now? I don't think so.
No.
And I don't really want to see Besar Sabovic on the bench unless he's like physically unable to start the rest of the season just with how good he's been in some of these flashes to begin the year. So I lean that Ilya will start. But I think the level because you and I were very high on Sabovic coming into the year, right? Like especially and we saw some of that passing those long changing balls on display last week. I think the way Sabovic has played, I have zero issue rolling out the same midfield that we did last week with Danny next to him because, again, I thought we saw Danny, even in the last 2 matches, just be very, very comfortable there in that midfield. And I think some of that, obviously some of it is Danny is very, very talented, but I think there's a part of it that the surrounding player personnel is making him even more comfortable in the role he's being asked to play over the last couple games.
Look, I'm right there with you. You can't bench Sabo. You can't bench Owen. You can't do it. You cannot do it right now at this point in time. So I'm going to lean Danny here. I think I'd rather have his athleticism, his speed in transition defense. Hopefully, get yourself a goal, and then you can bring in the hammer there with Ilya to lock it down defensively and sit back low. So I'm going to lead Danny here, and I think that he's earned that. I mean, 3-4 weeks ago, we're pontificating if he was ever going to start again, barring
in
injury
the near future.
or barring injury or what have you here. But I think Danny has earned the confidence back of the coaching staff, and I think it's been on display the last 2 weeks. And I think while it might be a safer lineup to have Ilya, I think a Danny lineup puts us closer to our ceiling. So I'm
Sure,
pro
yeah.
Danny. I'm pro Danny here, and I think I just want to have him to be able to get back on defense for some of these speedier guys that we're seeing getting healthy here for Portland.
Yeah, and I think if we see, right, like that first 10 to 12 minutes before Sabo and I think it was Durkin bumped heads, right,
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning stages of that St. Louis match, I think we saw a little bit of disorganization at the back for Austin, and potentially because Ilie wasn't out there. But as soon as
Yeah.
that injury timeout was over, and we talked about the communication you saw on the broadcast between the players, if they're able to lock it down how they did for the remaining 75-ish minutes of that match, I'm with you, man. Like I think Ilie not doesn't become expendable, and again, I expect him to start probably more matches than not the rest of the season. But the team on the road exhibited the ability to go out there without their captain, or who has been the captain to this point of the season, and go and get a road win and play very well overall defensively throughout the full 90. And speaking of defense, like Svatak and Julio is another conversation for me.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine Julio's ready to go 90 at this point if he had to. We saw him come in for Svatak near the end of that St. Louis match. I think I'd probably lean Svatak starts just because he's been starting and we've been winning, but not surprised either way. And I don't think I feel better or worse either way. I think I have pretty high confidence in all three of our center backs right now. And I imagine Heinz Eich, if Ilie is on the bench again, I imagine Heinz Eich will get the armband once again.
I'm going to differ from you here again. I think I'd rather see Julio than Svatak to get the start
Okay.
here. Again, it's same kind of argument I made prior with Danny and Ilie. I think Julio puts us closer to our ceiling, particularly our offensive ceiling. And we've talked about the offensive firepower that this Portland team has. They do give up a lot of good chances too. Like they've conceded 8 goals here. I'm looking at the table. Any team with over 10 points so far, which I know is very small sample size and it's not a whole lot of teams, they've given up the second most goals in that category. So like we can score on this team, and we want to see that offensive output kind of, get ramped up here. And we've been so solid defensively, even with kind of that rotation of like Julio, Svatak, interchanging at not interchanging, but when Julio was banged up, there wasn't really a drop off in the defensive play. So I think we're going to see a more offensive minded unit here. And to your point about bringing up that BHI quote, we're home. We want to push that back line up a little bit more. Julio definitely way more comfortable on the ball, definitely way better in distribution than Svatak. And also we might have to protect some of these Portland players from the Ukrainian hammer after what happened last year. Welcome back, Mascara.
Yeah. That might be the strongest case to start Svatak is just go handle Mascara over there. But I think you're probably onto something. We did see Julio start the first match, right? That's where he got injured in that first half, and we saw the offensive potency drop off, right? The quality of those chances and the number of chances that Austin was able to create just dropped off precipitously. And then again, if we want to dig even deeper into that, like bringing Izuni in for his debut and going to that 4-4-2 that just looked completely toothless at the end of that match. But I guess that, I expect to see the 3 DPs up front.
Yep.
And pushing up with a higher line, you probably get a little bit more involvement from Biru there. So yeah, again, it's good. These are good problems to have, man. We don't even have Dessler healthy, where it's like, yeah, Danny, Ilie, I'm good. Julio, Svatak, I'm good, right?
Yep.
Like, so yeah. Anything else for you here on this match?
I'm going to go ahead and lock in a 3-1 dub. You don't even need to ask me.
Fucker, dude.
Yeah, baby. Come on. Locked it in. The fortress is operating. The mind fortress is it's operating at levels that you can't comprehend.
Well, I must have a similar mind fortress because that was going to be my pick. And you know what? I'm just going to stick with it. Because fuck you, man. Like, you can't just come in there. I didn't even ask you how much is Austin FC winning by. So we both said Austin FC is winning 3-1, which would set another record for this season in terms of goals scored in a single match. But I do think that Austin is going to be the aggressor coming out here. Use that energy at home, like Heinz kind of alluded to in that presser today, and you can go listen to that on the club's website. He's like, yeah, kind of indicated we're going to be a little bit more forward thinking at home. And that's what we want to see, man. And like, you get a couple early goals, then sit back. I'm fine with it. Because again, we don't care
They
how
don't
you
want the ball.
get it done. We just want the 3 points. But guys have proven time and time again to start this season that we can defend a lead. So I'm not super concerned. As unesthetically pleasing as it might be to watch a team that's so defensively focused, like we talked about on Monday, man, I want wins. If we score a bunch of goals along with that, even better. That's the soccer utopia I want to live in, but wins over goals, man.
Absolutely, and they don't want to have the ball. You mean, you look at it right now, their season as a whole at 45% possession, I believe, something the bottom third of this league right now. Obviously, we knew the injuries, so they were a bit handicapped in what they actually wanted to do. But I anticipate from them a very counter-heavy approach to this game, sitting back, trying to absorb, and then trying to make your push and hopefully get one or two lucky attempts here, big chances that you can try to put something past Stuver. But if you can go ahead and neutralize that, which we saw in the St. Louis game, which was interesting because we thought they were going to be uber ultra defensive in that matchup, and they came out a little bit to start that game, and then you take on the huge waves at the end. This team in Austin has found different ways to win, and I think you're going to have to flip the script here from what we saw in these past two matchups to a more possession-based style where we're on the offensive side of the ball on the front foot.
Come on down to Farmer Field where the champions play. Get ready for the game. It's last business day.
Very quick last business day here on episode 212 of the North End Podcast. It's a bye week for FCTO, but we did get a piece of news from the club this morning, and this is great news. The match against North Texas next Friday on April 11th, the kickoff time is moved from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30. So my initial reaction was like, yes, I'm going to get out there to that game. And then I remembered one of my ex-players is getting married that evening, so I will be out of town. But I know that provides a lot of Austin FC2 fans a better opportunity to get out there and watch this entire match on a Friday evening. So I don't know why it was 5:30 to begin with, but good on the club or clubs, right? They had to probably agree to that for making the change and accommodating the fans.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm bummed you're going to be at this wedding because I was like, I'm getting my season debut this Friday for sure. North Texas too, They won't miss you at the wedding. The player probably didn't even like you that much. You probably benched him.
No, I got multiple texts this morning ready for it. So
okay,
we'll make our debut a little bit later in the season.
Wow, the best keeper in the world.
Damian Loss and Louisville City over the weekend, taking on one of our favorite teams in the USL outside of Louisville.
Detroit!
You know we love Detroit City FC because they beat the Dynamo in the Open Cup last season. So Damian starts and plays 90 in the 2-0 victory over Detroit City. 4 shots on target for Detroit, 4 saves for Damian, his second clean sheet of the season. Both of those clean sheets have come at home, and he's got 11 total clean sheets now in 38 appearances for Louisville City. Of course, this recap coming from our buddy, resident Louisville City fan, Trevor Allison. Trevor said he only saw the last 20 minutes or so live, so he was relying heavily on the condensed match highlights on YouTube for the first 70 minutes of this one. 1 save, easy catch on a floated header, another easy one on a long shot from a Detroit center back. Trevor says, for no reason in the middle of a spell of Detroit possession. Good save on a well-taken free kick from 20 yards out to begin the second half. Ball went right over the wall, and Damian got over to his left to keep it out. Strong enough punch to get it outside of the box. Final save was the most dangerous moment for Detroit in the 56th minute. A Louisville defender played a header poorly and put Detroit in position for a good low cross. The shooter was not completely free and didn't get a good shot off. Damian stayed middle and big and didn't overcommit. Trusted his center backs. They closed down the angle and the ball went right to him. Another little Austin FC note here. Manny Perez with an assist on the second Louisville City goal. Great play to get to the end line and cut it back. Not much to report for Damian. After that, Louisville sitting first in the Eastern Conference there with 10 points from their 4 matches. And they call their supporter shield the Players Shield in USL. 2 points behind San Antonio for the lead. So we are now 2 weeks away today from the Open Cup round of 32 and round of 16 draw, which, look, man, San Antonio, win your Open Cup match because we want it. And especially, we want a good San Antonio team. They've been bums the last 2 years or something like that, at least last year. I don't want a down San Antonio team coming to Q2. Bring us your best. We want revenge.
We definitely need some revenge. Manny Perez confirmed not the worst winger in Austin FC history. Confirmed. It's over now.
I agree. Open Cup draw 2 weeks from now. Lots of revenge. Let's close this out with the nonsense here, E. And another great week of nonsense for the North End podcast. You check in on the Verde Best Ball League here through 3 weeks. We've won 3 weeks in a row, E. It's still not enough to jump us up into the top 2 of the table, though, but we are right there. We are Austin TV. Actually got a stat correction, so shout out to their war room for being on top of it. After we scraped the scores, there was a stat correction on Anders Dreyer, so he went from 5 to 8 points, which replaced Alonso Martinez in their lineup, who had 7. So, We Are Austin TV is actually on 279 total points, 39 in week 6. Verde All Day is in second, 275 points after 46 points last week. We are 1 point back of Verde All Day. They're in second place, 274 on the season, 48 on our winning week. And then at the bottom, you see Soccer-Wise make up some ground on Moon Tower there in the bottom half of the table. And the Verde Pendant in the mud. But hey, we are like 4 weeks away from our first transfer window, right? We added a second transfer window draft here this season. So every team will be able to shore up some of their shortcomings here in just a few weeks. But hopefully by the time we get there, E, we're picking last in the transfer draft because we're in first. So it could happen this weekend. It could happen.
Oh, I think we should start tanking for the first pick.
That's what we did last year. Didn't work out. So we'll keep our eyes on the Verde Best Ball League, and you should keep your eyes on the picks here, E, because
you really should. You really should.
Hot. Last week, and you see Kevin Denke was our cover boy here, and our underdog fantasy entry, E, it hits. But I'm very, very frustrated with the way this went because we get Rafa Cabral gives up 2 goals to Minnesota. Cengiz Under got 2 shots attempted before the half against San Diego. Kevin Denke does not start. So we know that underdog, just voids that part of your entry. So it took it down to a payout for a 2 pick. Denke comes off the bench to start the second half. 3 shots. So it would have hit in a fucking half. But we'll take the victory either way for the 2 pick that it ended up being. And then in terms of the picks here, E, right? You go to your sports books, you make some of these money line picks, these goal scoring picks, plus 7.35 units. We hit our Miami parlay, we hit our Minnesota parlay, we hit Austin FC plus 210. Goal scorers, we get Latte Lath, Rossi, Evander, Under. Actually, I don't remember if Evander scored or not, but we know we got one from Under. We know we got Azuni plus 270. Fantastic week, E. So, again, if you are the person who has trailed every pick that we've given out this year, you are up on your bets, plus 17.35 units, and on Underdog, plus 7.66. So, again, look. If you have not joined in on the fun quite yet, you can sign up at Underdog Fantasy. The MLS season is here. If you want to make some picks on your favorite players in sports, check out Underdog Fantasy's Pick'em game. You choose higher or lower on between 2 to 8 players, and you can win up to 1,000 times your entry. Underdog is available in 33 states, including right here in Texas. To sign up, click the link in the description of this video and use promo code NORTHEND at sign up, and you'll get up to $1,000 in bonus cash and a free pick to get you started. So join the millions of fans who have won billions on Underdog. Promo code NORTHEND when you sign up at Underdog Fantasy. You can find the link to sign up in the description of this episode, both on the YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. You click on that link, promo code NORTHEND, you get the bonus cash, you get the free pick, and then you come back to the northendpodcast.com on Saturday morning and see what we're rolling with this week. And hopefully the fun continues.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. What an ad here, an ad you can make money off of.
Yeah.
Some people might like that. Some people could be into that. Some people might not like that too much, though.
All right, man. Well, anything else for you before we shut it down here? 2 days away from kickoff at Q2?
Come on, boys. Do it for Deebo.
Yep. I second that. Do it for Deebo. And that will wrap up episode 212 of the North End Podcast. We will be back on Sunday. Back to our regularly scheduled programming here, recapping Austin FC's match against Portland Timbers and talking about everything else that happens in the Austin FC universe. Between now and then, enjoy the rest of your week, everybody. We'll do the same. We'll see you at the Q on Saturday and back here for another episode on Sunday. Until then, he's E, and I'm Zach. Vamos Austin FC, everybody. Goodbye.